One of my favorite lines from Hamilton is Washington saying to Alexander, "Dying is easy, young man. Living is harder." Another thing that reminds me of that is the a marriage counseling type class, or like an introduction to marriage counseling, or maybe it was I don't know, just a class about marriage that I took at my Christian high school. There was this guy talking, and he said, I have all these men who say, I would die for my wife, I would die for her, I would, if it came down to it, all these things. And the guy said, well, it's great that you'd be willing to die for your wife, but why don't you live for her too? And that doesn't mean don't throw away your life. It means if you love her enough to be willing to give up your life so that she can live, then you should really make an effort to, in your daily life, not just do these grand gestures, but be there for her, be supportive of her, and love her in a way that shows her exactly how much you love her. Which, since I'm talking about something I learned at Christian school, and this was a pastor or whatever that was doling out marriage advice, I'm just going to go to Scripture again and say, and I recently said this in another thing, but I don't think it was G Gundam, or talking about G Gundam, so I'll just share it now, which is that no greater love is there than for a man to lay down his life for his friends. And that's something that happens at the end of this episode of Mobile Fighter G Gundam. I'm MJ, and I'm here to talk about Mobile Fighter G Gundam episode 42. This is King of Hearts, Queen of Sorrows, my platform for discussing one of my favorite anime of all time. So, if you're watching the video version of it, or if you're looking at the images on the website in the show notes, most of them don't have to do with what I'm actually talking about. And that's because I didn't know what I wanted to talk about this episode. And it's actually taken me a long time to figure out what exactly I'd be focusing on, which, if I'm being 100% honest, I'm not 100% sure what I'm focusing on, because there's two main juicy parts to this episode. One is the revelation that Kyoji, in fact, was Schwarzbruder, or has been Schwarzbruder all along, that Dr. Mikamura and Major Alube have been using Rain and Domon and the Kashu family for personal gain of some sort. We don't know exactly what Alube wants, but we know that Dr. Mikamura was jealous of the Kashus, what they were able to accomplish. That Mr. Kashu in particular, can't remember the dad's name, was a better scientist than him. So I guess Dr. Mikamura is the Aaron Burr to Dr. Kashu's Hamilton, if we want to reference that at all. I don't know if we do, but there you go. And because he was jealous of him and he wanted what he had, he wanted his ultimate Gundam, not his Dark Gundam, but his ultimate Gundam that had these three amazing abilities. And Dr. Kashu had pointed out the flaws in his own Shining Gundam, with its anger, emotion system, and things like that. He was just overcome with jealousy, and he wanted that. He wanted to claim all those things for himself. He basically wanted to be, or have all the good things in his life that Dr. Kashu had, and he joined forces with Alube to see that happened for him. This is all mind-blowing stuff. Rain is crying. She's, talking about how cruel her father is, and she's like ashamed of him and his actions. And the only thing she can do is help Kyoji, who Dr. Mikamura actually tries to murder. Anyway, it's interesting because she stops him. Kyoji is really messed up, and he tells Rain that she has to do these drastic measures, which is basically electrocuting him with a couple live wires, which forces the DG cells to regenerate and repair him to an extent. Then he leaves to Lantau Island, and he goes to help Domon and the others fight the Dark Gundam. And there's so much there I want to discuss. There's so much there I want to explore, and I know it's synopsized basically, but how can I talk about it without telling you what happened? So much of that is good. Kyoji lives a life of suffering, or this android Kyoji, whatever, lives a life of suffering for the purpose of a greater good. There's that Christology, if you want to call it that. There's that Kyoji's living for something. He's living to stop the Dark Gundam or the Ultimate Gundam from being corrupted and used for evil purposes. That's what he's willing to live for and die for, because, I mean, honestly, the guy looks pretty bad. And he's been, to an extent, living for Domon to help him become a better fighter, but really, honestly, a good man. If you think about the fact that Dr. Mikamura's system in the Shining Gundam was based on using rage, and that it became unreliable at some point, and that Dr. Kashi had pointed that out to Mikamura, and that Kyoji, or as Schwartz Bruder, was all along telling Domon he had to tap into and find this serenity in order to truly access the power of his Gundam, and to be, again, it's analogous for being, a better man, a better fighter, all these different things. It's all encapsulated in, the tournament style, or in the fighting aspect of the show. But, he was trying to help him because he was familiar with the fact that anger and hate can only get you so far, probably because that's something that he learned from his father, and he did all he could to, join the Gundam fight and to help his brother learn that so that he could be prepared for, dealing with the Dark Gundam in the future, etc., etc., because he was wanting to redeem it, and that's really awesome. So Kyoji's had this really great mission throughout the show as Schwartz that we didn't really know about until now. Obviously, we could tell that Schwartz was trying to help him, and everybody has a vested interest in the Dark Gundam not being allowed to propagate. And man, I really wanted to talk about the other stuff, but now I'm going to talk about conspiracy related things. So did this video just get demonetized? Oh wait, I don't have enough followers or enough people watching me to be monetized, so never mind. The Ilube and the Japanese government and maybe Dr. Mikamura are keeping all this Dark Gundam stuff very hush-hush. They don't want anybody knowing about it supposedly because they don't want anybody else vying for that power. But if the Dark Gundam goes out of... But you know what? People who want power, especially politicians and political leaders, will always do shady things to get more power and to ensure that they will never stop being powerful. If you go to Neo-Russia, their gulag and their Gundam graveyard where they had been dissecting Gundams and taking all their most powerful parts and using them for their Bolt Gundam or whatever. I don't know. Well, anyway, yeah, basically that's it. They were using it to make their Gundam as powerful as possible by cannibalizing and stealing technology from other people. Wong is obviously very corrupt. He steals the Berserker system from what is it, Sweden? Or he has one made just like theirs. He kidnaps Allenby to use her, and he's trying to leverage this Gundam fight to make himself the ruler of space, for all time ad infinitum. The Mexican government tries to kill, I can't remember his name now, whatever. They try to kill their guy and assassinate him because he won't fight for them. So, go back to Italy, starting with Michelot chariot, that they pulled a mafioso, a mob boss, a criminal, somebody who'd harmed so many people, and made him their fighter because he was strong, because they wanted more power and they wanted to seize that power, and they decided that doing it by any means necessary was appropriate because, I don't know, we act emotionally and we justify rationally. So I'm sure the people who were pulling the strings in Neo-Italy had a good reason for what they were doing, but obviously it was immoral and a bad idea. And I think that's enough talk about corruption and power, because I really want to get to the focus here, which is, people acting nobly and selflessly. And I was wondering if it's possible that because the Dark Gundam is such a destructive force, if all the nations participating in the Gundam fight knew about this threat lurking in the background, if they would band together to stop it, or maybe they would be blinded by their greed, I don't know. But it's interesting to know that, and I get that Hong Kong and China are separate from each other, because I believe at the time that the show was made, Hong Kong and China were separate, and it wasn't until like '99 that they became rejoined, because Hong Kong was under British control, if I remember correctly. Anyway, if I'm wrong on that, correct me, please. But I saw Rush Hour, so I'm pretty sure that's right. Anyway, you've got Russia. You've got a Russian fighter, an American fighter, a Chinese fighter, and a French fighter. Now, the French, one could claim that they, turned tail and joined up with cozied up with the Nazis in World War II pretty quickly once they were invaded. The Russians, obviously, they're doing bad stuff. Hacking all those Gundams and stealing Gundams and capturing Gundam fighters and stuff like that I talked about already. The Chinese in the real world do that sort of stuff now, where they're stealing technology and they pirate a bunch of Western technology, whether it be programs or computer programs, things like that. And that's an interesting thing. And then the Americans. I mean, as an American, I will contend that America sucks in our foreign policy. Like, I love this country. I'm very happy that I live here. It's a great place. I think more people should come here, and that would be good. It would strengthen the country to have more different ideas and maximum freedom. I'm all for that stuff, but the American Empire is awful and evil, and even we can get into this later if you want, which I'd be happy to discuss this ad nauseum, but you should check out Fool's Errand by Scott Horton. It's about the 17-year-long war in Afghanistan and how it sucks. Anyway, and then if you look at Domon, Neo Japan, they're hyper corrupt in this situation, because this whole Dark Gundam thing started because of them and Dr. Mikamura and Ilube's dark ambitions. Although we don't know exactly what Ilube is after. And yet these fighters from these nations, which could be seen as very untrustworthy, are all banding together and all fighting for a greater cause. And it's really interesting. Like, a focal point of this is that, and this is what I decided to name the episode after, Sai Saici and Argo are willing to give up their lives. Sai asks him, are you prepared to give your life? And Argo says, basically, no. And, I can't die. I have too much to live for. I'm trying to live for my friends. I need to win this fight to save my friends. And Sai says the same thing. Yeah, I don't intend on dying either, because I cannot stop until I've revived the Shaolin Temple, or whatever. And yet they proceed with a kamikaze attack, which is what they call the special attack with the butterfly wings that Sai Saici has, and making fried chicken. Sorry. Argo puts himself within the blast radius of the attack that Sai is going to do in order to destroy the Black Raven, Winged Raven, King of Heaven Gundam, or whatever that Michelot is in. And they don't want to die. They have so much to live for, and yet to stop the Dark Gundam from wreaking havoc on the world, on the Earth, and harming other people, these guys are willing to give up their lives. And they can see that even if they have to lose out on their dreams, that it's worthwhile to do this, to nobly sacrifice themselves, even though they have no intention of dying, but they're willing to die if they have to in the process of making this gambit, basically, which is really noble and impressive, and I love it. And I think, I don't know, maybe the theme in this episode, in this review, in this analysis, is looking at what people are willing to live for, what people are willing to die for, and I don't know, just I like that. I like how high the stakes are, not because I like death in media like this, but I like how serious it is and how thought-provoking it is. And, on top of that, it looked really cool. Sai's attack is really awesome looking. Although, I mean, I understand your ultimate technique could put your life at risk, but it stinks that your ultimate technique is it's going to kill you. Like, that's not cool. But I mean, that's a Pyrrhic victory. That's you're losing too much. But I could see, I I get the point of killing yourself in an attempt to, or like in your mind, a guaranteed shot at killing your opponent, so that they can't go on and kill all your friends or several other people. Like that makes sense. Trading your life to guarantee that you end theirs in order to because there's a guarantee that they're going to end the lives of other innocent people. I get that. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I'm gonna start rambling if I keep going. I really like this episode. These last 9 episodes of the show are really fantastic. I mentioned that this was what I was waiting for back a couple episodes ago, and this conclusion to the show is really great. And gosh, there's so much good stuff in it, and I'm so excited about next episode. The only thing that could have made it better is if excuse me, having some tea here. The only thing that could make it better, because something similar, if you saw the preview for the next episode, or if you know how these shows work, it's going to be George and what's his face, Chibity, my man, Chibity Crockett, fighting John Bull, the British Gundam, to help Domon get to Master Asia. And the only thing that would have been better is if the French and British, I guess America and France have a cool relationship, cool history with each other. But I was going to say it'd be cooler maybe if it was the British and French guy working together to fight the American or some other person, because the British and French have been at war with each other for so long, and it would have just kind of made it even more impactful. Although I did think it was funny that you had there were the Sino-Russian wars. There were these wars between Russia and China, and in this episode you have China and Russia's fighters working together, and that's pretty cool. I don't need this show to right historical wrongs or whatever, but it's pretty cool for me with how much history, or with the amount of history I know, which is not very much. I have broad strokes on history, world history, and history of war and things like that. It just makes it that much cooler. And I don't know. Anyway, again, that's all I have to say. You can check out my other shows. Please help me by liking this, sharing this, whatever. I've had some increase on the audio subscriptions over on iTunes, so that's pretty cool. And I want to thank you for hanging out with me. And before I go, just a couple quick questions. Do you think Kyoji's secretly the hero of this whole show? Would you have liked to see more of the show from his perspective? Do you think it would be interesting? Or does he have too much figured out? Maybe he's too mature and he has too much together, so it wouldn't have been as much of an interesting struggle. And do you like how the show's revealing all this twist near the end here, and showing that there was actually way more going on than everybody thought? Or is that a good thing for kids to see, oh yeah, you can see this whole thing going on, and then it turns out there's actually all this stuff going on in the background that's way more complicated and crazy than you would have expected? Anyway, I just think those are kind of interesting questions. So if you don't mind, you can drop me an answer in the comments. All right, I'm really done now, so here I go. Remember, folks, go out there and grasp happiness. MJMunoz.com is home for all my work. Podcasts and reviews of anime, tokusatsu, Star Wars, and more, plus my original writings. If you didn't enjoy this, critique me. If you did, leave me a comment. If you really like this, consider tipping me at coffee.com/MJMunoz. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Until next time, be well.